So I gonna have some questions on how those teams work. I mean, the development process. But maybe first, I ask you something probably you already answered many times. I mean, microservices and Zalando story. So if you can say a few words about the motivation and the process, were you been a part of this process, or was it already there when you joined the company?
When I
the
joined
migration process.
Yeah, understood. When I joined the company 3 years ago, I mean, we were mainly already in a microservices architecture. However, I know the history, at least from people telling it. Nevertheless, I think even most companies which are sufficiently complex, even if they have moved into microservice architecture, still have some hidden monoliths, and so do we. So it's not fully done.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can also tell about the history maybe of how this went. This was definitely before my time, but when Zalando started, which has been more than 12 years ago now, it was, of course, built on running on a small system as a typical startup, right? It was running on a Magento eCommerce system, and obviously it did quite well at that time. But at some point, it encountered some limits to be able to scale that. And then how it normally goes, also Zalando built something by themselves in order to cater to the specific needs that they had, in order to be able to differentiate themselves from competition. And they built their own monolith, as also so many do. And over the time, also you experience then with monoliths the limits to scaling these. And that was the time when they decided to go to microservice architecture. And I think we're very well in that regard set up. So we're really having a microservice oriented architecture. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to work with these 200 teams in parallel. But nevertheless, there are also some legacy components that we still need to decommission.
Because you meant scalability, but you really mean scalability in order to scaling the team and structures even more than the performance of the website, right? To scale up the teams working on the code with monolith is a nightmare. Yeah,
actually it's both, I would say. So the one thing the one reason why you would like to have a microservice architecture is because it decouples the components and it allows teams to work independently, right? And so you can work on features in parallel that you're not able to work on in parallel if you are in a monolith architecture. So that's kind of the development scaling. And the other thing is also right that you mentioned, it's the performance scaling, because if you're running a monolith software, you can typically only scale the whole, right? So if you have a backlog in, let's say, checkout, to make up an example, you have to scale the whole application and all the underlying hardware it's running on, if it's on premise at these times, in order to scale just one part. And this gets much easier, of course, in the microservice architecture, because you can scale the parts hopefully independently from each other.
Yeah, you can still scale only those parts that are under pressure. It's much easier. But on the other hand, I guess managing the whole microservices architecture is more complex.